Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. Stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode 227, presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan 65-Step Process. For those of you new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. Today, my guest is Anna Dibble, who is founding director of the Gulf of Maine EcoArts. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, Anna.
Thank you, Nancy. It's good to be here.
It's nice to have you here. We've been having a good time together promoting this project.
Yeah, already. It just opened the last week.
So we'll have a good talk about it today. So Anna Dibble is a visual artist, project designer, and curator. She has shown her work in galleries and museums in the northeastern United States since 1971. Between 2018 and 2023, she founded and directed a project-based initiative and produced 2 collaborative large-scale, year-long sculpture and environmental exhibitions. In the past, she worked in the animation industry in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York at Disney, Sesame Street, and Electric Company, Marvel, and Hanna-Barbera. So, wow, Anna, you didn't just fall off the turnip truck, did you?
Well, it's difficult making a living as an artist, so we have to get creative.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you have a lot of drive, so I admire that, because I do too. We share that. So tell me about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Well, I grew up in a tiny town in Vermont, in southern Vermont, and I even went to a one-room school. It was that tiny. There were fewer than 50 voters there. And so I spent a lot of time in the natural world, what we call the natural world. Fishing, camping. We had wild animal pets, domestic pets, and so that whole thing with the land, other animals, insects, birds. That was always a just integral part of my life growing up, and then I got out in the world with my career and started realizing that people were not like me, that there was a disconnect between a lot of people and the natural world. And that has driven my artwork and also this project over the years. And I started painting and showing my work when I was about 22. My father was an artist, and so there were art supplies in the house, and it was just sort of a natural, very supportive for both of my parents and my grandparents. And I just started doing it, and I had a talent I think I probably inherited and went from there.
Yeah, but you have, I think, a unique combination of art skills, but also organizational skills. I've witnessed how organized and how good you are at project management. Where did you get that?
Who knows? It's something that I actually wish that I had known when I was younger, because I could have worked for nonprofits, and I've become a fundraiser and found a skill with that, with this project, this 4-year project. And, they're skills that I actually didn't realize I had particularly.
Yeah, well, you've got them. So tell us about SeaChange and what inspired it.
Okay, well, SeaChange came about 4 years ago when I moved to Maine now 8 years ago, and I read an article. It was a series of articles in the Portland Press Herald by Colin. What's his last name? It's Woodard.
Right. Yeah.
And he wrote about how the Gulf of Maine was warming faster than all the oceans in the world, or almost all the oceans in the world. At that point, it was 99%. And I thought that was an incredible statistic. I had grown up in Vermont where there weren't any oceans, and one of the reasons I moved here was because there was an ocean. And I started reading about the more environmental articles and what was going on with this particular body of water. And in 2018, I had the opportunity to be in it was a cod funeral, the Atlantic cod, which has basically left the Gulf of Maine for the most part because of the warming and other factors. We made a 7-foot paper mache cod that we put in a homemade coffin, and it was like a New Orleans funeral march with a band, and we marched through the streets of the old port, and a friend of mine gave a eulogy to the Atlantic cod on the steps of City Hall. And that kind of triggered an idea I'd had for a long time about doing a collaborative art project I hadn't been able to do when I was younger because I was always working and making a living. And I'm retirement age now, so I thought it would be great to do a gigantic sculpture installation to show people what was going on under the waves in the Gulf of Maine. Because most people just know it by being in the water swimming and kayaks and boats, and they didn't know that part. So that was the beginning. And then I talked to Stephen Profizer up at Bigelow Lab for Ocean Sciences, because they work with artists. They're a science lab that studies the plankton in the oceans all over the world. And they took the project on. So that was, everything went from there.
Yeah, so you started working on this, you said 4 years ago?
Yeah.
And now the exhibit is at the Maine Maritime Museum in Bath.
That's right. This is the second exhibit that we've had. The first one was at Bigelow that opened in 2021, and then I didn't know what was going to happen with it. And 2 months later, we talked to the Maine Maritime Museum, and they commissioned us to do the current exhibit.
Yeah, and
a year ago.
I was there for the opening, and it is amazing. Because, well, I'm a water person. I love swimming and I love being under the water. And you really do feel like you're under the water when you're in that exhibit. The sound effects.
That was the idea, to make it
they
call these new exhibits, which are all over the country, they're called immersive experiences, immersive art exhibits.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And actually, when I was going through, there was a marine biologist, I believe, who was explaining.
Robert Stenick,
Yes.
who I've worked with, and he's a really interesting man, yeah. And he's done many dives down to Cash's Ledge, which is the exhibit is kind of focusing on. Cash's Ledge is an underwater mountain range about 80 miles off the coast of Portland here, and it's kind of a wondrous place. It's got a special gyre. I call it a plankton pump because this swirling water pumps the plankton up and down this mountain range, and what it does is it creates a situation where the wildlife in there, the biodiversity of all the marine wildlife, is healthier than in most parts of the other parts of the Gulf of Maine. So there's a kelp forest there, which is very unusual now. I mean, with the warming waters, they don't usually exist. And Bob Stenick has been down there since, he said, I talked to him after I gave the talk the other night. He's been down there since the 80s or something. He said that when he originally went down there was so much fish, it was just dark with fish. It's changed some, but it's still a very healthy ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, I was just lucky enough to have been standing behind him, and he was talking.
Oh, he's so charming, too.
Yeah. So I learned a lot
Yeah.
and enjoyed that. I mean, it's always nice when you can see something beautiful and be immersed in a exhibit like that, but also learn
Yes,
something.
to learn something. And we have the Eco Lab, which is part of the exhibit that the Maritime Museum has created to actually do some more of that explanation about what we're trying to do with the more abstract art part.
Right, and you can actually sit down at a table and create some
And you can make
artwork.
your own marine animals.
Yeah, and that was really enjoyable. So I'm really happy that we work with the Maine Maritime Museum, and this is so new and different.
Yeah.
It's a great aspect of the museum.
Yeah, this is something very new for them. I think they wanted to do something new. I think their whole idea is to kind of shift their brand from being about the past and more about the present now and what is going on with the water right outside their museum. And I think that we came along, it was just serendipitous. We came along at just the right time.
Yeah.
They've been looking for something not exactly like this, but something that would kind of like knock the socks off people. So that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. So what change do you hope to see as a result of SeaChange?
Well, one of our partners, we work with a number of nonprofit organizations, and one of our main partners is Conservation Law Foundation. They're based in Boston. They have an office here in Portland and one in Portsmouth and I think Vermont and various other New England states. And they are working on a possible way of permanently protecting Cash's Ledge. And so we are trying through this exhibit to help them with that process, just by giving people the news about this place, which a lot of people haven't ever heard of, but also just to really push people to be more involved with stewardship in the Gulf of Maine, and especially for trying to help this spot. It's connected with something called, it's a national effort called 30 by 30, 30% of land and ocean to be saved and protected by 2030. And this is part of that whole international effort.
Well, that's very exciting. And I think it's great that you as an artist can help impact social and environmental change. And also you involved a lot of other artists as well,
Oh, yeah.
which we're going to talk about in a moment.
Yeah.
But first we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
We'll hear more from Anna in a moment. But I want to remind everyone how to get a PR Maven Things to Do Today pad. You go to prmaven.com/giveaway and submit your mailing information so we can mail you a to-do pad. And Anna, you might get one too.
Okay, great. Sounds good to me.
So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more from Anna Dibble.
Sprague & Curtis is a locally owned real estate company. We're primarily focused in central Maine. I got excited about Nancy's book because she's so well known in the area for her marketing and branding techniques, and we're always looking to expand and learn and grow, and so a lot of us here at the office decided that we wanted to read her book and learn some new techniques.
It benefits Sprague & Curtis to have a large brand and audience because there can often be multiple years between transactions with clients, so it's important to network with them and stay in touch with them in those in-between periods. And this book really helped us learn some techniques and methods to continue to do that. We organized a small book group with Nancy's book with brokers in our office this winter to share information and remind ourselves how important it is to always be working on our network and continually reaching out to our customers.
Platforms like social media are important in expanding your business, but equally as important are handwritten notes, cards, letters. She inspired me to send her a note of appreciation, just thanking her for the book and her insight. In reading Nancy's book, I was excited to look to continue to grow our brand and our audience. I think she does a great job of motivating us.
Nancy's book really helped me learn a few things in marketing and branding and how important it is to stay on top of reaching out to clients periodically, staying top of mind, providing useful information, and really telling our story as a company.
It's near Bromley and Stratton, the ski mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just talking about where Anna's from. Anna's from Peru, Vermont, which is in southern Vermont. And yeah, when I was growing up, I skied at Stratton. So
Sure. Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
area.
Bromley was my mountain because Bromley is actually in Peru. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely been there too.
Yeah.
So this podcast is about public relations, and
Sure.
what are your hopes for the PR results promoting SeaChange?
Well, I wear a number of hats with this organization. I always like to say I kind of operate the rudder. All the decisions were made by a group of curated artists all along for the past 4 years. But the PR for the first one, I'm besides being a fundraiser, I'm the publicist for this too, and so we were able to get quite good press for the first one, and it was a combination, just the way it was for raising money, of environmental and art. Now those are two separate sort of PR pieces. They were also separate for grants. But we were eligible for both. So my hope with this is that the publicity can come from both of those areas. And the environmental ones are important. And I think tied to the art, they're important, but I'm also very interested in the art part because we are artists primarily. The people involved have very strong environmental concerns, and all of our art, personal art, is connected to climate change and things like that in sort of an abstract way, but it is basically primarily an art exhibit.
And how did you all get together, all of you artists?
Well, I curated everybody. What happened was I came up with this idea, which I spoke about earlier, and what I did was I went about it by finding other artists in Maine, or certainly the Portland area, who I had followed for a while, whose personal work was like mine in that we were addressing the environment, the natural world, in ways that were not didactic. They were more abstract than the way some artists deal with it. And so I found some kindred souls. Just some of them were just cold calls, and just met for coffee, and we started talking, and they were interested, and it went from there. And we had 7 people in the first project that made all the decisions, 7 artists. And for this second one, we had 4. So that was how it happened. It was just, I put together these groups of people, and then we all worked together.
I think that's remarkable. I mean, it's a study in forming a network, really.
Yeah,
and that,
it's
like
unusual. I mean, there aren't many organizations like ours. It's not a proper 501c3. It's basically an artist collaborative. And I just thought, okay, let's see what will happen. It was an experiment.
Yeah.
And it's worked very well.
Well, I think you should have a case study at some point that you write about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can PR help in promoting art exhibits? This is something you've had a lot of experience with.
Yeah, I have, because I've been showing my work in galleries since I was, for almost 50 years now.
That's not possible.
And I've had to do a lot of, publicity for myself. And for the arts, it's extremely important because the arts in our culture are not, they're almost put in this sort of separate category of, it's too bad they're not more part of the culture the way they are in Europe and Canada and even Mexico. They are separated. So publicity is extremely important, I think. It's otherwise word of mouth isn't enough. It just, we need the press.
Right. So together we've worked on press releases and an opinion column, which you had in the Maine Sunday Telegram.
Which is great, yeah.
And then there's a column in today's Brunswick Times Record, which was written
from the fishing organization, yeah.
Right. And we hope to get some national press. And I think that will be coming. So.
And Boston would be good. Boston Globe,
Yeah, I think that will happen.
Yeah. I mean, we are the Gulf of Maine, which is what this exhibit is the overall umbrella is what it's about, extends from the Cape up to Nova Scotia. So there's a lot of shoreline and people who are connected, to this body of water.
And when you say the Cape, you mean Cape Cod?
Yeah, Cape Cod. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a New England person, so Cape.
Yeah. So tell us about the interns. I met Viva Getz, who's
yes, you did a nice
Colby
interview with her, and
she's a Colby College student, and there were other interns. So tell us how you found them and what they did.
Well, we worked with I think there were 7 or 8, I guess 8 interns was the top number. We approached the Maine College of Art, and we had interns from there, and they also gave us a space to work in the summer. Where we started work in early June with the Maine College of Art interns, and then we had an intern from St. Joseph's College, and who ended up actually painting Ammon Rock, which is the highest peak in Cash's Ledge, and we have a gigantic sculptural piece of this mountain in the exhibit, and this young woman, very talented artist, painted the entire thing. I mean, just fairly remarkable.
Wow. Now, what's her name?
And her name is Maya Michaud. Michaud, yeah. And then Viva came from Colby, and also we had a intern when we were doing the installation in January, and that was Zora Lewis and Viva Getz, and they were both from Colby. And Colby has an organization called the Buck Center, which is an environmental center that we worked through. Like that, we just put together this group. There was one young guy from Maryland Institute. I think it's called the Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA. And so, yeah, they were part and parcel of a lot of different parts of this exhibit. So this exhibit, if you go into it, it's not like a group show with different artists showing their work. It's everybody worked together in this thing and then, put together. There are some individual artists who did individual pieces, but for the most part, with the interns, we worked on a lot of different parts of it.
So that's another collaboration that you
It was
set
another
up.
collaboration, absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, well, the first exhibit we worked with 16 schools from teachers and students from elementary level through college level. So for this one, I decided it would be nice just to work with college level interns that we paid. So I actually raised the money to pay them, I think that was a really good thing to do.
Yeah. I'm sure that the fact that they were getting paid made them take it more seriously.
Of course, that always helps.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, especially when you're a college student.
Yeah, exactly.
And an artist.
Yeah.
Anna, is there a book, an app, or a podcast that has helped you in your career, and how?
Yeah, I don't have any one book. I will say that literature and reading, I couldn't do what I do or wouldn't have been able to paint or anything without it. I mean, it's been a very close part of my life. Fiction, nonfiction, poetry has been a big influence. It continues to be. I just get so much out of reading, so I can't even I could choose some, but it's very important.
Well, what is your favorite book?
Well, I don't have a favorite book, really. I can talk about a book that I read recently that was actually it is one of my favorite books I've ever read, and that hardly ever happens to me. And it's called I can never quite remember the name of it, but it's probably a bestseller. I don't read a lot of bestsellers, but it's Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr.
Oh, yeah.
And it has the elements that inspire me the most, which are fiction and a little bit of what they call science fiction. It's not really science fiction. It's more fantasy, magic, things like that. Time travel. It had all those elements. And it's just, I think, a brilliant book. So
That's great. Well, thanks for that recommendation. Yeah. I love hearing, what my various guests come up with for that question. So we actually curate lists of books.
Well, I have a few environmental writers too that I read. That which influence my work. And Gretel Ehrlich, she's one. Barry Lopez, who has passed away, but he's a very good environmental writer. And a man named Paul Kingsnorth, who comes from England.
Nice.
And those are books that I kind of return to over and over again to read because they really kind of feed that part of my interest in our how everything is interconnected, and that humans are just as the other animals are just as important as we are, and we're all connected. And if we don't address that, we're going to be in more trouble. We need to think about that a lot.
Yeah. Well, I noticed right from the start you talked about other animals.
Yeah.
And I
we
did
are an
pick
animal.
up on that.
People don't like to admit that, but we are in fact an animal.
I picked up on
we
that.
are a primate.
and I was also thinking, wouldn't it be great if this exhibit at the Maine Maritime Museum inspires some students or others to write some poetry or literature?
Well, yes, and it also inspires them to get involved with the climate crisis and the environmental world and all that kind of thing, or both. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of it is mainly, I'd say, other than primarily an art exhibit, but also it's an educational exhibit, and we hope to, definitely inspire people.
Yeah, well, I believe you are.
Good.
You've inspired me.
Oh, good.
So
That's good.
you.
I like that. That's good to hear. Yeah.
So how can people get in touch with you, Anna?
They can get in touch with me on my email, anna@annadibble.com.
And you said you have an Instagram?
I have an Instagram. Yeah, that's open to the public too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a LinkedIn?
I don't have LinkedIn. I should do that.
We'll have to work on that.
I did for a while, but I haven't kept it up. But yeah, I have a Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Gulf of Maine EcoArts.
Okay, Gulf of Maine EcoArts.
And a website. The website is currently being updated for this exhibit. I've been working with my web designer on it this week. So.
All right, good. All right, well, Anna, this has been a really great conversation, and I really appreciate you coming to join me today in person. It's nice to be able to see each other in person.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Nancy. It's been really fun.
Yeah, it has. I've enjoyed working with you. So if you have any other questions for our guest or like to hear more about a certain topic, you can email me at nancy@prmaven.com. And thanks for joining us today, PR Maven Nation. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the Skills and Games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.